don't want to face up to that. And although maybe that's how they want to live, it's going to lead to health conditions and blah, blah, blah. But as long as they own up to that and they acknowledge these things, then they can either choose to change or not. So that's one example. Now let me see if I can get into the more nitty gritty that I was thinking, and how my short-term friend at Woods Hole was putting it. He was talking about it in more of a relationship sense. And let me see if I can. How did he say it? We were talking about one of his he was there in a new relationship. He's like in his 50s. He's gonna turn 60 soon-ish, in a few years or so. And now he started on this new, seemingly quite wonderful relationship that he was in at Woods Hole, and they had been together for a little while. I don't remember, a couple years maybe, and they had just recently moved in together during the whole COVID thing, because it was already happening beforehand, before all that hit. Hey squirrel, it's okay. So anywho, so we were talking about his old relationship and what wasn't working in there, or something like that, or I was going to ask, like, how are you handling conflicts in this relationship, if you don't mind my asking. And then he started talking about his old one, and how it would, like, he'd say, like, oh, this thing here is bothering me, and instead of, like, acknowledging what was said, his partner, she would just go right into the attack, like, oh yeah, what about you, and you're terrible for these reasons. And it's like, okay, let's just try to acknowledge a little bit about the truth of my experience here. And so she wasn't able to acknowledge whatever truth he was trying to present. So there's little icky gray areas in here. Sometimes people can be offended by things that, may or may not be actual problems. I was give an example, like if someone is offended by my saying hello, and my only intention in saying hello is to be very friendly and kind, and they become offended, I mean, I don't think there's anything for me to change there. I don't think there's any truth to be discovered. So it depends on the scenario. There's some grays in that. But back to the story, there was an example of that similar thing was happening on the trail, and I was trying to present this, and that's obviously a very difficult thing to do, and maybe I need some work on my approach. I think I was doing an alright job though. And anyway, there was an example though when fairly early on, when Indy and I started hiking together, I was for some reason I had some intensity in me. I was just like, she would say something, and then I would have an opinion or a thought about it, and I'd be like, rah! I'd really put it out there. And so at one point, I did that, I guess, a few times. I didn't really notice. And then at one point, she's like, "You're being really intense." And then I stepped back and was like, "Oh, maybe I am being intense." And I was able to accept that truth about myself and the behavior I was displaying, and then I took it on and said, you know what, I don't think that's very, a pleasant way of being. I think I personally enjoy being less intense, and I think a lot of people around me would enjoy me being less intense as well. So then I lowered my intensity. had more pleasant conversations. So that's just like a very tiny, that was an easy one to accept, because it had nothing to do with, my ego. I wasn't holding on to that, intensity as a part of my identity. You know, if someone, I don't know, I can't think. Like, you know, I hold on to a few things about myself for all that. Oh, you know what? I like to think that I'm very perceptive, and I'm very self-aware, and I'm very outwardly aware. And if someone says I'm not, I'll be very upset. I'm like, oh yeah, you don't know anything. But there's probably some truth in their statement in that moment, whatever situation they're talking about. But for me, I'll have like a really strong, quick reaction, and that's not accepting the truth of that moment. So this is all coming down to the big final statement of accepting our truths. Like people want, like, what I'm gonna call little happiness. I call it, like, you know, little happiness. And so they're seeking that little happiness. So they'll lie to themselves, or they'll live in their happy bubble. But then when you live in your happy bubble, it's hard to. Well, I'll just give you a quick little sense of the view here, if it lets me. Do the view. There's like, maybe you can see the view a little bit. So there's a little bit of a lack in. Oh, like, there's another cool thing. Sorry guys, the crescendo's gonna have to wait. I love these little Eastern newts. I call them little fire newts. They don't move at all. You can touch them, and they're very like silly. They don't know how to walk. If you watch them walk, they don't do a good job. They're not very smooth about it, and they'll just like flop around. They'll go to the edge of the trail, and they have no ability to go down a hill. They'll just flop, and then they'll land somewhere and be like, whoa, that was interesting, and they stay there. Anyway, I love those little newts. They're my favorite part of the trail. So they live in their happiness bubbles, and when you live in there, you can't find any growth. There's no internal growth. So you have to accept things about yourself. We have to allow for self-discovery and self-awareness, and sometimes allow other people to very rudely point these things out, and to be able to take it on anyway. And then through this, self-truth acceptance is one way I could maybe phrase it. You can grow, and then through growth, you can find fulfillment, and then through fulfillment, you can feel. I would call it big happiness. Through fulfillment, you'll be pleased in your existence. I would say this growth fulfillment is one key to what I also call the big umbrella of happiness, where there's kind of an overarching emotion, or kind of feeling state, and then you'll be sad or anxious or afraid, or you'll feel joy, or jealousy, but the big umbrella underneath all that, you might feel these things, but the big umbrella is happiness. That's the big happy. And so, but fulfillment is part of it, growth into fulfillment, and the other part is living within your values. So part of the other self-awareness and self-understanding is knowing, what are my values, and am I living in accordance to them? And if you are not, you'll notice you'll feel a lot better if you do. So that's kind of a separate thing, but I'll leave it there. And that's the big umbrella happiness. Growth into fulfillment and living in accordance to your values. And you can do these things through accepting the truth, or truths really, about yourself. Both the positive things and the struggling things. Oh boy, this is pretty neat. all that water is at the doorstep of this amazing hostel. The hostel, this amazing shelter. How awesome. It's got like a little bit of a double-decker thing happening. I mean, it has just a remarkable fire pit situation going on. And obviously it's got that really nice water source. If you're here early enough or leaving late enough, you can really enjoy a swim, pretty much.